The Killer is the 12th movie directed by what no one can deny is one of our greatest living filmmakers. David Fincher has come a long way since his 1992 debut feature Alien 3, a film with a notoriously troubled development and production process.
It's amazing to me that Fox is the #1 studio in the country because they're all such a bunch of morons.
Fincher has said very little about Alien 3 over the years, practically disowning the film. And based on everything I've heard about the behind-the-scenes nightmare, I don't blame him. Alien 3 has gotten a reevaluation over the years from Fincher loyalists and fans of the series, who initially dismissed it as a mediocre victim of a studio more interested in a release date than a movie that could stand the test of time. But no amount of rose color on those nostalgia glasses can change the fact that it just isn't a great Alien film. While it certainly has merits, great performances from a stellar cast, some visually stunning cinematography, and a fantastic score from who was at the time a newcomer, Elliot Goldenthal, and who's evolved into one of my favorite composers. None of that is enough to overcome what is a lackluster script. Down but certainly not out, Fincher would bounce back with a vengeance with one of the best films of the 90s and one of the greatest thrillers ever made, Seven. I encourage you to check out the breakdown of that film on this very channel if you haven't already. Needless to say, Fincher recovered whatever goodwill was lost during the release of his previous film and cemented himself as an exciting new voice in cinema. That reputation would grow with his subsequent films, and while some of them are better than others, all are brimming with directorial authority, visual excitement, standout performances, and most importantly, skirting the edge of what many consider to be accepted norms in mainstream cinema. Whether it's the brutality of physical violence and societal satire, the lack of resolution in a serial killer story, making one of Hollywood's handsomest leading men into a freakish old man, turning the topic of boring old Facebook into a compelling dramatic roller coaster, Fincher has always managed to find a way to flip what we thought we knew on its head, have us look at it another way, and find something compelling and unexpected in the process. And this is exactly what he's done in his latest cinematic masterpiece, The Killer. It's apt that The Killer reunites him with the writer of his breakthrough masterwork, Seven. Aside from uncredited rewrites on The Game and Fight Club, Andrew Kevin Walker and Fincher haven't officially collaborated from start to finish on a film since 1995. Fincher had been trying to make The Killer since 2007, pitching the idea to Walker a year later. It obviously took a lot longer for the film to be realized, but it was absolutely worth the wait. First off, The Killer is just gorgeous to look at. Like all of Fincher's films, you could watch it with the sound off and still come away satisfied. It goes without saying that the meticulous director's kinetic, elegant, and gorgeous visual style is reliably on display, the camera acting as an extension of the title character, precise, economical, and efficient, while keeping the proceedings moving at a breezy pace. But it also may be Fincher's least flashy movie in that, like the title character, it isn't trying to call attention to itself. The film wastes no time in giving cinematic norms the middle finger by slowly, methodically, and without apology, presenting a procedural into the mind, methods, and philosophy of the title character, played brilliantly by Michael Fassbender. While sitting in the theater, I began to notice how restless and uncomfortable I became, not because I didn't like what I was seeing, but because my steady diet of mainstream cinema had up to that point conditioned me, like a lot of people, to expect a certain narrative structure when watching movies. First acts tend to unfold in a very simple and predictable manner. The opening of The Killer was simple, but it was anything but predictable. Fincher was asking the audience to put aside their expectations, move out of their comfort zone, and allow themselves to look at the genre differently. The first 20 minutes of the film reminds me of the opening sequences of There Will Be Blood, another film that skirts norms and expectations to deliver something cold, brutal, but incredibly efficient and dramatically thought-provoking. Like Daniel Plainview, the killer, who was never named by the way, is a man laser-focused on his goal to the exclusion of all else, and nothing, absolutely nothing, is going to stop him from attaining it. Kubrick's 2001 is another film that similarly opens in a very matter-of-fact and nondescript way, simply presenting a series of incidents that unfold in such a way as to let the audience decide how they feel about it, rather than forcing any specific theme or point of view. And as the film unfolds, you come to realize you're not watching a typical Hollywood movie. It eschews convention, dares to be different, and moves to the beat of its own drum. I can't tell you how refreshing it was to witness this amongst a sea of very predictable Hollywood fare. Even the score by the men who are now regular Fincher collaborators, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, is a little more sparse, atonal, and weirder than we've come to expect from them. Still wonderful, though, providing the images and scenes the appropriate levels of silent contemplation and menace. Also, it's not what the film does, but more what it refuses to do. There's little to no apparent character development to speak of. The killer seems to be exactly the same at the end of the movie as he was at the beginning. Or is he? I'll expand on this later. Fincher presents the killer less as a flawed character in need of healing, and more as a man completely in his element. Like a nature documentary on great white sharks, the fascination is in witnessing how they operate. Similarly, it is absolutely fascinating watching this man channel his considerable will into the cold, calculated, and unremorseful destruction of his targets. There also isn't a three-act structure to speak of. The film is told in chapters. Fincher and Walker tackle this narrative much like the killer tackles his targets, with focused attention to the exclusion of all else, even narrative convention. The Killer is a story of revenge, much like RoboCop or Kill Bill. But unlike those films, it has no central villain to hang its quest for vengeance on, and the killer's targets are as impersonal as the man himself. There is also no Hollywood heroics, no developing romantic subplot, no life-affirming coda to close the film out. And its final scene of potential revenge is the most anticlimactic scene in the entire movie. There isn't an ounce of Hollywood to be found in this film, and yet it might just be the most entertaining and watchable film of the year. What makes The Killer so incredibly watchable has a lot to do with its central performance by Michael Fassbender, an actor who continues to prove how valuable he is to the art of acting, showing everyone else how it's done. The Killer's extremely calculated, focused, and willful existence is perfectly brought to life by the accomplished performer, resisting the urge to be flashy or scene-stealing. It's a character that could have easily been dull, two-dimensional, and boring, but Fassbender injects him with an undeniable charm and wit, like a hipper, albeit more aloof and colder version of James Bond. It's easy to see Fassbender's turn as the android in Ridley Scott's Alien prequels, being preparation for this role, as that character has a similar cool, aloof, and calculated way of going about his business. It's safe to say this film wouldn't have worked without Fassbender and owes a lot to his amazing performance. And the character's insightful satirical views on life act as an interesting window into his psyche, which seems to show cracks as the film progresses. Or does it? The ending, like the character, is complicated. One could easily see how he's betrayed his mission goal, but also how that may have been his goal all along. The ending is as enigmatic as the title character himself, and it shines a bit more light on his psyche. The killer spends most of the film observing other people, without them aware of it, but maybe he wants to be more noticed, and the final showdown may have been his way of leaving a permanent mark on someone who may otherwise have never known of his existence. For all his cleverness, wit, and skill, the killer is still someone who only exists at the fringes. As a result, he's barely a person. He's more of a process, a function of causality. For all of his clever quips about the folly of society and man, what good is it if his targets never know the error of their ways? So I see the film as a man fighting for his humanity, in a world that's become increasingly inhumane. His final gesture to his final target may be the most humane thing he could do. Some may see this as Fincher's coldest and most impersonal work, but I see it as the opposite. There's nothing more important in this world than understanding one's place in it and their relationship to it. The Killer is a man striving to solve this very puzzle, but there's no denying David Fincher's place in cinematic history as one of the greats. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like and subscribe button, as I'll be posting more content in the future. Thanks for watching.